She is the founder and managing member of Solari Investment Advisories, LLC. She is a former Assistant Secretary of Housing for the Federal Housing Commissioner under the first Bush administration. She was the president of the Hamilton Securities Group investment bank and financial software developer, and a Wall Street insider. So we are going to get her take on the devaluing dollar, on gold hitting a record high, on what's really going on in Dubai, and how this is going to affect us not only in the United States, but globally. How are you, Catherine?
Hi, I'm fine.
So let's just get right into it. We're seeing record numbers for gold today. The dollar continues to decline, and we're talking bailouts in Dubai. What does this all mean for us here at home?
Well, what it means is our expenses are going to rise and our income is going to fall. It's that simple. And we're going through a structural change economically as a society. We have, for the last 15 to 20 years, moved abroad many of the high-paying manufacturing and other jobs, and done it in a way that significantly weakened the unions and anything that would protect the value of labor. So we're watching a fundamental shift between the value of labor and the value of capital worldwide. And it's an integral part of the way that globalization is being achieved. And so we're just, the round with Dubai is sort of the latest sort of crisis du jour related to what happens when you print lots and lots of financial paper, whether it's currency or bonds or debt securities, but you don't build up an equivalent amount of real wealth in the real economy. So we're watching a back and forth between all the paper that we've printed and the bubbles that we've engineered globally and the real economy. And the precious metals is really just the real economy saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't want your paper. We're worth a lot more in terms of your paper. And the challenge for many of us is many of us are just holding the paper.
Well, you just discussed briefly how this country has essentially been gutted from making anything. We don't really have an industry that creates and exports anything. In fact, I think our leading export at this point is garbage ideas and promises that really aren't there. I mean, how did this happen? How did we allow ourselves to stop manufacturing any physical materials whatsoever?
Well, in the 1990s, we implemented the GATT Uruguay round and created in 1995 the WTO, the World Trade Organization, which radically changed the rules. You know, it's like any game. When you blow a whistle and change all the rules, the whole game changes. Mm-hmm. And what the World Trade Organization and the GATT round said is, we are now free to move capital in and out of any place, and basically shift jobs globally in a way where we can, play labor off against each other around the world. And that's happening at the same time when you're instituting lots of new powerful technology, because a lot of this is made possible by telecommunications and satellite technology and digital technology. You're instituting it where it's possible to radically reduce the number of people you need to do manufacturing. So literally we're seeing new plants come up around the world where everything is done by robotics and computers, and you need very few people, where once you needed 2,000 people to do everything, you need two. So part of this is simply who gets the blessings of new technology, and what we're saying is we're going to take all those blessings and productivity and centralize it into the wealth of the few and pull it out of the well-being of the many.
It's the Alex Jones Show. We'll be back after this with Catherine Austin Fitts. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am Jason Burmis, sitting in for Alex Jones, who's on assignment in Dallas. We're with Catherine Austin Fitts, and you were talking about really the restructuring of the global economy and the economy here at home. How do you feel the SDR, or Special Drawing Rights Unit, that the IMF is now really issuing fervently fits into all that. Is this the global currency that they plan to replace the dollar with? Because there's all this talk that the dollar can no longer be the world reserve currency, and it would seem that although this hasn't taken a physical form yet, that may be the next step.
Well, there are a couple things happening at once, Jason. The first is there is tremendous tension between the financial really speculative economy and the real economy. And if you look at the countries and the organizations trying to implement trade around the world, it's very painful to be trying to move bananas from here to there when the currency or securities you're operating with to manage a real business have become really a tool of financial speculation and economic warfare. So we see tremendous demands by countries that are focused on real export and real trade, trying to find a way to transact and manage reserves in a way that's good for their real economy and get away from the financial speculation. Mm-hmm. So there's a demand for a global currency that's outside the global speculation system. That's one. Number two, there's no doubt there's a desire also to get off the dollar because the dollar's in a long-term decline. And what the dollar has become is, in one sense, is a form of global taxation through the balance sheets. So countries around the world buy dollars, they go down in value, and literally it's a taxation system. So there's a real desire for something, one, that's global, that's two, that's outside of the speculation, and three, is not going down in value. And that's part of what you're seeing with the SDRs and the movement to a global currency. But the other thing, what we're seeing is we're just seeing a desire for people to have something that's not going down, which is part of what's pushing the price of gold and silver and the precious metals up a lot in the last couple of months.
Mm-hmm. So what does the United States look like once the dollar is dumped as the world reserve currency? Is this literally the death of the dollar and we would need some kind of other currency in the United States? Would this trigger even a deeper depression? I know that Obama's talking about a double dip recession, which to me is just a semantical word game to say, hey, things aren't going to get any better. They dare not use the term depression. But if the dollar is taken away as the global reserve currency, does it survive? And what happens here in the United States?
Well, I don't think we're going through a depression or recession. I think we're going through, I call it a financial coup détat. Mm-hmm. So I think what you're watching is a fundamental re-engineering of how the world is governed, and it's intentional and it's planned. Now, it happens in organic ways. It's not, it's not as though it's perfectly scripted. Mm-hmm. But we're going through a fundamental change, and the decision to basically reduce the middle class to a much more, to a much lower income with much less political power lifestyle was an intentional decision made in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And essentially what has happened is you have one or two generations in the United States that built up huge wealth over their lifetime, and what we saw was that wealth transferred out of the economy and abroad during the 90s, sort of hidden behind the bubble. But that's an intentional thing, and so when we talk about this in terms of depression and recession, we're talking about business cycles, and that's not really the traditional. We're not watching a traditional business cycle. We're watching a fundamental re-engineering of and centralization of economic and political control, and it's very much global and very planned out. Let me give you an example. I was in London in 2002 to give a paper on, it's called The Myth of the Rule of Law, about the sort of how the process of privatization was working here in the United States and how things were, basically criminal enterprises being used to centralize all sorts of ownership and control in real estate into a relatively small group of people. And I gave the paper, and following me there was a former reporter from the Wall Street Journal giving a paper about the sort of economic warfare in Russia during the 90s, and then followed by a wonderful reporter in London who gave one on Eastern Europe. And we were all in a state of shock because we realized it was the same companies, the same banks, same hedge funds, same defense contractors operating as syndicate in all three places. We just didn't, we hadn't seen the game because we thought it was just North America or Russia or Eastern Europe. And what we didn't see was there was a global process going on of buying up and controlling all sorts of land and real estate and enterprises, and was very much part of a process of economic warfare that was going on globally.
Well, when these elitists talk about redistribution of wealth, what they really mean is that their goal is to take the United States and take us from our first world nation status and delve us into this second world nation status as they consolidate power, as they gain more power. And I see this system being implemented with this cap and trade scam and now being exposed in ClimateGate. I mean, that's why they created these carbon markets and carbon prices. I mean, that the EU openly trades, European Union. This is about globalization. And I think that this is the next step in this redistribution of how the global economy works. Yes?